Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission operation here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. I'm Will Robinson Smith, reporter with Spaceflight Now. So good to have you with us on this Monday afternoon here on the East Coast. We're broadcasting, as we always do, from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at KSC. It is a beautiful, albeit hot and kind of muggy afternoon here in Florida as SpaceX is preparing to conduct a static fire test of its Falcon 9 rocket. We are here in launch week ahead of the planned liftoff of the 3 astronauts and 1 cosmonaut that comprise the Crew 11 mission, a long duration flight up to the International Space Station. It's set to lift off on Thursday, July 31st at 12:09 p.m. Eastern, 1609 UTC. A little bit hard to make out, but we do believe that at this point SpaceX is fueling its Falcon 9 rocket ahead of the planned static fire of this vehicle. Certainly appreciate the little more than 500 of you, almost 600 of you now that are watching with us live. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking the like button and sharing the stream, allowing us more folks to find their way into this live static fire test coverage. We've got most of our team out in preparation for the support of this testing operation. Our John Pisani there at the press site, along with Adam Bernstein. Adam has got all the cameras in position. Actually, John is now off-site again. Our Stephen Young is running the technical operations of the broadcast. And we'll have the full crew in action come launch day. But if you're not already following the fellas on X, you can find them at their handles here. Adam is at Aburn NYC, Michael Kane at MD Kane Jr., John is at John Pisani Photo, and be sure to follow Spaceflight Now, simply at Spaceflight Now. You can find us there on X as well as Threads, Blue Sky, and Facebook. Taking a wide look now at a very recently manicured press lawn here at KSC. Crews are getting ready to support the upcoming launch of this mission on, again, Thursday, the 31st at the earliest. NASA and SpaceX have multiple backup opportunities if, for whatever reason, they're unable to launch on Thursday. It's a little too far out to have already gotten a launch weather forecast for this mission, but we should hopefully get our first weather update probably on Tuesday. If not Tuesday, then certainly by Wednesday. I want to thank our moderator, Jeff Hansen, in the live chat for helping us out, along with Rick Donner. And if you see any of the other mods crews on in throughout the course of this countdown to static fire, be sure to give them a big old Spaceflight Now hello. If you can help them out by following the rules of the live chat, we ask that you converse in English so that our moderators can respond as appropriate, that you refrain from using all caps as well as delving into overt religion and politics, and last but certainly not least is that you treat each other with the kindness and respect that you yourself would like to be treated. Also, one of our other channel members, Cumulus Granatus, is in the chat to help answer folks' questions as we roll on through the countdown. This and every live opportunity we have here on YouTube is made possible by our wonderful channel member community. So thanks to folks like I'm Lita, as well as the Rocket Girl, Sulfur for Lunch. Let's see who else we've got today. The chat is being very laggy on my end, so apologies for that. Let's see, we've got Lenny Davis in the house, the Roddy Mom. Lots of good folks here today. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, which is shop.spacelinenow.com, where you can find things like the Crew 11 mission patch as designed by the astronauts. Channel membership also affords you access to member-only videos here on YouTube, and of course, the ability to watch all of our live launch liftoff moments from here at the Cape in 4K, and access to our members-only Discord as well. Speaking of our channel members, I want to thank Jeff Hansen for gifting 5 memberships. Really appreciate that, Jeff. And to our 5 newest gifted members, welcome aboard. Glad to have you with us. And if you haven't already, be sure to thank Jeff in the live chat. And we hope you decide to stick around with channel membership beyond the month you were just gifted. Last but not least, if you have a comment or question about this operation today or other goings on in the realm of space or spaceflight, you can use the YouTube Super Chat feature. And not only will you be giving us some interesting things to talk about as we cruise on through the countdown, but you'll also be supporting what we do here at Spaceflight Now, and that, my friends, is always greatly appreciated. We're currently T-minus 23 minutes and counting ahead of the planned static fire test. We'll keep reemphasizing that as more folks do join in the broadcast that this is a static fire test, not a launch today. Although if you need that launch itch scratched, we do have another Falcon 9 launch that is currently set for tomorrow night. Another batch of Starlink satellites getting ready to lift off from, of course, not here at 39A, but SpaceX's other Florida-based pad as things stand right now. That is Space Launch Complex 40 over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Head over to our website anytime at your leisure. Check out our launch schedule to keep up to date on the latest flights that are coming up here on the Space Coast and beyond. We've got 22 minutes on the clock before the ignition of those Merlin engines as planned. So let's go ahead and briefly step through the countdown timeline for this test operation. Let you know the milestones that we've passed through and what is still on the docket. Crew access arm retracted away from the Dragon spacecraft atop the Falcon 9 rocket at about T-minus 42 minutes. The Dragon's launch escape system was armed at T-minus 39 minutes. Loading of RP-1, a rocket-grade kerosene on board the first and second stages, began 35 minutes out. Same is true on the first stage for liquid oxygen at the same time. Coming up at T-minus 16 minutes is when the second stage lock-load process will begin, but in less than a minute, we'll see the chill down of the feed lines there at the pad before, of course, lock-load starts. That process kicks off at T-minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds, and here at pad 39A, we see the so-called big vent really kick into gear at around T-minus 20 minutes and 30 seconds, so about half a minute from where we're standing right now. T-minus 7 minutes is the engine chill for the 9 Merlin engines at the base, the Falcon 9 booster. SpaceX will flow a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, and that'll help protect the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during startup. About 6 minutes out, the first stage kerosene tank is full. 4.5 minutes is when the clamp arms just beneath Dragon's trunk will open up, and then the transporter erector, or the strong back, will recline away from the rocket. And we see the start of the big vent, which indicates that the ignition is just maybe like 10 seconds past the start of the minute for 3:09 here on the East Coast. So just bearing that in mind. Coming up as well, the 4-minute mark is when Dragon will switch to internal power. The flight director will give a call that they are go for the static fire following the rocket switching to its automated systems. That go for static fire will come up at T-minus 45 seconds. The engine ignition sequence is triggered at T-minus 3 seconds. And again, this is a static fire test, so at T0 we'll see the ignition of those Merlins, but the Falcon 9 rocket, assuming all is nominal, will stay put exactly where it is. Taking a look at our live chat here, I want to thank Larry Mask for a $10 super chat. Thank you, Larry. Also, thanks to Alan Gable for both the super chat and for the message there flagging about the membership badge not showing up for some reason. We will look into that. The comment has been noticed. I really appreciate you making a surprise of that. If there are other members out in the audience who are also seeing a similar issue where they are paying members but are not seeing a member badge, go ahead and shoot us a message. It doesn't have to be a super chat, but actually, if you can message us in the members Discord, that would be probably the best thing there. So we're not taking up space in the chat here, and it's easier for us to go back and reference what's in the Discord. So thanks in advance for flagging that, Alan. T minus 17 minutes and 30 seconds remaining before the planned static fire test. We'll throw in the caveat that because this is a static fire test, SpaceX does not give a lot of heads up as far as the operations for today. So bear with us. We're pretty darn sure we've got the right T0, but in case there's a little bit of margin there, just want to give that caveat at this point in the count. As you can see, the so-called big vent has tapered off, and SpaceX is now preparing to start loading liquid oxygen aboard the rocket's second stage. As SpaceX has been preparing for the launch of its Falcon 9 rocket with its Crew Dragon Endeavour on top. Been a busy few days for everyone here on the Space Coast. Of course, we saw the arrival of the Crew 11 astronauts and cosmonaut that happened back on Saturday afternoon, and then in the overnight hours between Saturday and Sunday. For those who were keenly watching Launchpad Live, you may have noticed that the Falcon 9 rocket did make its exodus from the hangar at Launch Complex 39A, as seen in this video from SpaceX. That is Crew Dragon Endeavour at the top of the Falcon 9 stack, which will be making its sixth trip to space, the first Crew Dragon to do so in SpaceX's fleet. Once the Falcon 9 rocket and Dragon reached the pad around a little before 10 a.m. this morning, the rocket was brought into the vertical position, or I should say that was on Sunday morning. Sunday morning when the rocket went upright. That was followed today by the crew going through a process of a rehearsal known as the dry dress, where the astronauts and cosmonaut, as well as the launch support team, conducted a full launch day operation, with the exception of fueling the Falcon 9 rocket. Our cameras were rolling as the convoy happened to drive by the vehicle assembly building. You can see the chopper that just went by the meatball. Those black Teslas down below with the lead vehicle, and then the astronauts with the commander and pilot in the first one, and the mission specialist riding just behind. After heading out of frame from our camera's perspective, let's fast forward to them arriving at the pad, where they then exited those vehicles, did their typical lean back as they looked up at their launch vehicle, ascended the elevator, made the final climb up that last set of stairs up to the level where the crew access arm is, walked across in preparation for that flight day simulation. All seemed to go well with that, and taking a look here at some images on the other side of this operation, you saw the crew. These are some images from behind the scenes. These were shared by NASA as captured in the Hangar X site, where teams from both NASA and SpaceX were monitoring the mission operations as far as the flow of the crew, the health of the vehicle, and everything. Standing at the console, the woman in focus, that is NASA operations manager for the commercial crew program, Nicole Jordan, as she was monitoring the dry dress rehearsal earlier today. One more image of the process. You can see some of the screens as they were taking a look both at the rocket as well as the capsule there in the white room. You can see just on the right-hand side of that screen within the big box here. Can't really tell which astronaut or if that's one of the cosmonauts that is, but it looks like they shifted up the pre-launch ritual of signing their name around the NASA meatball logo, something that all the crew that are flying on board a commercial crew program mission will do, is add their signature to that side of the white room. Just out of frame, there is a SpaceX X logo, and that is surrounded by the signatures of the private astronauts that have flown with SpaceX. Think missions like the various private astronaut missions to the space station through Axiom Space, like the AX-4 mission that just wrapped up recently, or the free-flying missions like Fram-2 or Inspiration-4, Polaris Dawn. The operations that happened today were preceded on Friday by what's called a flight readiness review. Here's a photo taken with all of the folks involved in that process who were at the Kennedy Space Center, with the screens denoting that the FRR had concluded. This is one of the last big agency reviews ahead of the launch of a crew mission to the International Space Station. There's one more that's on tap, that is the launch readiness review, which will happen after this static fire test is done, since they, of course, want to have that good data to know that the Falcon 9 rocket is healthy and ready to support the launch of two NASA astronauts, an astronaut from the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, or JAXA for short, and the Roscosmos cosmonaut from Russia. Just under 10 minutes to go before the ignition of those 9 Merlin engines at the base of the Falcon 9 rocket. Appreciate the little more than 1,000 of you who are watching along with us live this afternoon. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking that like button and sharing the stream to allow some more folks to find their way into this live test coverage. As is customary with any crew mission, the astronauts and cosmonaut who are ready to fly to space do have the opportunity to design their own mission patch for the mission. Also, SpaceX designs its own particular layout for, well, any mission that it flies, but in particular crew missions. So want to show those to you now. On the left is the one designed by the astronauts and cosmonaut of Crew 11. That design on the left is available right now to purchase at our shop, which is shop.spaceflightnow.com. The one on the right is SpaceX design, as you could probably tell since it includes that ever-present four-leaf clover that is tucked away somewhere in all of SpaceX's mission patches. You can see that Crew 11 astronaut design patch that is on the countdown clock currently on the right-hand side of the screen. A picture of the 4 crew members is on the left, of course. Can actually give you a better view of that image right now. If you give me just 1 second. There you go. So this is your Crew 11 cadre. 2 of them are first-time flyers. 2 of them are experienced, having been to the space station at least once. Going from left to right, you have Oleg Platonov, who is the Russian cosmonaut. Then to his left, our right, that is Mike Fincke, who is going to be making his 4th trip to space and serves as the pilot of Crew 11. Moving down the row is Zena Cardman, another NASA astronaut, making her 1st trip to space. And finally, on the far right, with the flag of Japan on his arm, that is Japanese astronaut Kimiya Yui, who is going to have the pleasure of meeting a man that he calls his best friend, currently up on station. That is Takuya Onishi, who flew up with the Crew 10 mission. And the 2 of them were actually both members of the astronaut class of 2009. So a rare opportunity for 2 JAXA astronauts to get to meet on orbit. But this will also be the first time that 2 members of the same class of astronauts get to meet on orbit from JAXA. So a really special moment for those 2. Glad they are serendipitously be given that opportunity. Speaking of opportunities, we're just about 6 minutes away from the static fire test of this Falcon 9 rocket. At this point in the count, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. We'll see the retraction of the strong back coming up, starting with the releasing of the clamp arms just beneath the Dragon trunk, and then that large white structure that you see there. It's actually punch in so you can see what I'm talking about. Just to the right of the rocket, that will recline back a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. Now, just about 3.5 minutes to go before the planned start of the static fire test, the ignition of those 9 Merlin engines. We're coming up on the point at which the Falcon 9's first stage liquid oxygen tank will be full. That's coming up right about the 3-minute mark. This particular booster, which will be used to launch the Crew 11 mission, is going to be flying for just a third time on this flight. 2 of those missions will be in support of crew missions to the space station. First, of course, was the AX-4 mission, which happened back on June 25th. The other flight that this booster has flown so far was a Starlink mission, Group 12-10, that lifted off at the end of April. The tail number, by the way, is B1094. Following liftoff on Thursday, it will return for a touchdown back at landing zone 1. And as SpaceX begins to shift its landing capabilities from landing zones 1 and 2 to landing pads that are adjacent to its launch pads at both Slick 40 and Launch Complex 39A. This mission will be among the final of the landing zone operations at those 2 sites. Less than 2 minutes to go. At this point, the Falcon 9 rocket should be fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. That additional venting that you're seeing there, that is the ground gas closeouts. As SpaceX releases the remaining liquid oxygen from the feed lines there at the pad, you can see the crew access, or the strong back has reclined just a smidge away from the rocket. Normally in a launch scenario at T0, it would pull back in a much more rapid fashion to get out of the rocket's way. But of course, this is a static fire test and not a launch, so it'll remain where it is for the duration of this test. T-minus 1 minute and counting. With 30 seconds on the clock, assuming that the SpaceX launch director made the call that they're good to proceed towards a static fire, we'll see those engines light up now in about 20 seconds. 15 seconds. And here we go. In about 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And static fire has not begun. Give it just another minute in case our countdown clock was slightly off. It appears as though the strong back actually may have realigned alongside the rocket. Of course, as those familiar with the Falcon 9 rocket launch will know, SpaceX does not have the ability to hold its countdown, so given that they did not ignite those engines, we're nearly a minute past when that should have happened. It looks like they have called an abort on the static fire test for today. We will work to learn some of the reasoning behind it and see if SpaceX and NASA decide to reschedule this test, and if so, when that would happen, and if this will cause any shift in the timeline for the launch of Crew 11. Again, because SpaceX uses its type of the style of fueling that it does, a hold is tantamount to an abort of a static fire test. So If you're just now joining us expecting to see the static fire test, the test appears to have been aborted by all accounts. Just going back and reviewing the booster history of this one, as we mentioned, this was the booster that supported the AX4 mission. And for those of you who were following along with that test campaign, there was an oxygen leak on the booster that did cause the mission to have to be delayed some days. So, again, not saying that what happened before is repeating again. The teams ahead of AX4 did say that that issue had been corrected. They did another tanking test following the leak discovered on the static fire, and they allowed the X4 mission to move forward. Just give you that information to give you some context for this booster, that it has been a bit of a problem child previously in its second flight, or second flight campaign, I should say. We're also standing by to see if we can get any update from SpaceX, see if they're going to be saying anything about this before we go ahead and hop off air with you. Reviewing our footage, it looked like the strongback started to return to its position alongside the Falcon 9 rocket uh, around the 30-second mark, maybe a little bit before that is when it started moving back to the rocket. Again, at this point, neither SpaceX nor NASA has issued a statement regarding the aborting of this static fire test. And at this point, TBD if this will impact the launch date for the Crew 11 mission. We will, of course, keep you appraised of that on our social channels, as well as on our website, spaceflightnow.com. For those who'd like to keep following along with the updates on this mission, of course, like I said, we'll have those for you on our social channels and website. But you can also keep it right here on our YouTube channel at our 24-hour stream Launchpad Live, so you can watch the progress of the Falcon 9 rocket if there are any other notable moves that happen at this point in time. At this juncture, though, SpaceX will work to safe the rocket and, of course, is going to be reviewing this data. As I mentioned, this will all be folded into the launch readiness review. That'll give the final assessment of whether or not teams are ready to proceed into the planned launch day, which again currently is July 31st, but there are other backup opportunities if needed. I want to thank our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, for running the technical operations of this broadcast. Thanks to our Adam Bernstein for getting the cameras set up. Thanks to our moderators, Jeff Hansen and Rick Donner, for helping us out in the live chat, and to Cumulus Granatus for answering folks' questions. We'll be back with our coverage. Of course, the next mission that's set to launch from the Space Coast again, that is coming up tomorrow night, the flight of Starlink 10-29, set to lift off at 11:30 p.m. Eastern, 0330 UTC for those around the world. Next Vandenberg launch is coming up the following morning at a little past 8:30 on the East Coast. We'll have live coverage beginning of that mission about a half hour before liftoff. Be sure to hit subscribe on the way out the digital door and turn on notifications, ring that bell, and look forward to welcoming you back here when next we have live launch coverage. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others. We will see you next time, folks. Until then, bye-bye.